All right, welcome back to the TCI headquarters. Been a while since we've been in here talking football, Will.
Yeah, it's nice.
We got a nice season getting ready to start Saturday. A little old game, as Dabo talked about today. Just a little cream puff coming along that he was hoping they would have one day, but he kind of got on Graham Neff a little bit about the schedule. He's like, "Yeah, are we ever going to have a home game to start the season?"
he says that's a great. That's an AD problem, not a Dabo problem.
And he says, "Oh yeah, we got one next year. A little old team named LSU coming to town." So we're gonna find out a lot. Will, you were over there today for interviews. Dabo, both coordinators, number of players. I guess one of the big things is obviously the fans probably realize this by now, but for ever since we've been doing this, it's been Mondays and Tuesdays for interviews.
Yeah.
Dabo switched it up.
He did. So give a little history on it because you know I'm all about history.
I didn't want this to go an hour.
Mondays were generally, back in the day when I first started the beat and you were working the beat, back in like 04, it used to be just a couple of reporters would show up at Vickery Hall. We'd get one or two players that we were doing feature stories on, and that would be it. Then somewhere around 2010 or so, it blossomed into what we know today is. And so it came like every Monday. You know, we meet with players and stuff like that. On Tuesdays, we meet with Dabo. So Dabo switched it up this year, and he kind of wanted it to. Basically, the point of it, he wanted to be he wanted to talk to us first before anybody else talked to him, and I get that. He kind of surprised it. We went this long before he changed it up.
Which is funny because he talks to us Sunday night, which is before anybody else talks. But
yeah, so I like it because the old way, everybody else wanted to talk about the previous game that just happened, and nobody would mention. And this is the first day is generally when you get the most players, and nobody would mention like the team they're going to play that week, and the players haven't watched film hardly any on it, and so it was always kind of like if you weren't getting a specialty story, you didn't get much out of Mondays. But now, since they're moving it to Wednesdays, now you're going to get Dabo on Tuesday, and like you said, we got some players, we got the coordinators today. And now on Wednesday, we're going to get probably more information than we ever have talking about the opposing team and what they see, what this. I kind of like Wednesday.
The game will be done by the time we get through talking to Dabo about what happened. Mm-hmm. Dabo had some, I guess let's start with the injury front.
Yeah.
A little bit difference there in what Dabo said and one of the other assistants, but Dabo said, "Hey, we're healthy, we're good to go." Was his message.
We're good to go, and so he was asked specifically about Sheldon Lewis and Jaden Lucas, and he said, "We're good to go. Everybody's available. Everybody's gonna play." And fast forward, Wes Goodwin comes in, and we asked Wes Goodwin about him, and he says, "Well, I heard Coach mention about the injuries earlier," and he's like, "So we're day to day, and that's what we're gonna be doing, just day to day." So. That's different than what the head coach said.
A little bit different, but
yeah,
it sounds like based on what we've seen for a number of years, Pat, they're as healthy as they've been going into a season in quite a while.
Yeah, knock on wood, they are. You still got a couple days. Today is a live day, so this is a day they hit on normally on Tuesdays. So knock on wood. They're in good shape though overall. The offensive line seems to be very, very intact, which we've seen going into the season. That's not the case in the past. Mm-hmm. We've seen going into the season where there's been guys missing on defense. So we've seen where wide receivers have been missing. So a lot.
Wide receiver room, we haven't had this kind of depth in a while. And you got the two stud freshmen ready to
absolutely
make sure everybody else is on their A game.
And people ask me what's the difference. Like, I get that all the time. They're like, "Well, what's different about this wide receivers than last year's?" And I said, "Well, last year you had 6 guys that were scholarship wide receivers that you could count on. If any of those 6 guys got hurt, now all of a sudden your depth, 4 of the 6 got hurt."
Well, and what's different is you just got 2 5-stars walking in the door.
Exactly. So, and you got 9 scholarship receivers on playing that can play. That's big. Those 3 extra guys are huge when you talk about scholarship receivers. Understand that word I'm using, scholarship.
And Dabo, for the last 3 years, has talked about how Cole Turner could be the best receiver on the team.
Yes.
Cole Turner is not the best receiver on the team. Sorry, I hate to say it, but now he may be passed real quickly by some freshmen.
Oh, I hope he is. Personally, nothing against Cole Turner. I'm sure he's a great kid and a great athlete. But you bring in 2 5-star wide receivers, you hope those 5 stars take off, and by at least by the 4th or 5th game, they've kind of jumped a spot or 2 in the rotation, right? So that's what you're hoping. So I think this week you're going to see, we're going to get to it more later, obviously, when we talk about the game itself. But I think Bryant Westco is going to be, he's going to play a role in this game, I think.
All right, what jumped out to you about what Dabo said?
Well, I think, it was more of the same that we've heard the last couple of weeks, right? Georgia, big game, looking forward to playing it. And
wish you could play them every year.
Right, wish you play them every year.
Which is stupid. But.
Just, the normal stuff there. I think the thing that stood out to me was more like, when he brought out Spurrier, that was kind of funny. And then, also, when he talked about the kicking situation, I guess that's probably the biggest news of the news, right? Other than the injury situation. He named, Hoosier, Nolan Hoosier, the starting kicker. And the funny question was, what we heard, we kind of knew that was where they were going, so no surprise on our end, right? But he was asked, like, oh, this is going to be a big week for the kickers, and Dabo immediately says, no, we already got a starter, it's going to be Hoosier, and he's like, it's he was the best kicker in camp, he made 80% of his kicks, and they asked, how close was it, and he said it really wasn't close. He said it was close there early. He says, but then Hoosier separated himself, and so. Well,
and that's obviously we saw that's key. It could be huge in a game like this if it's close. But got in some regards the number 1 kicker in the country coming in. So we'll see if he produces. Hopefully he does. I think he's got the high school record for the most field goals ever.
I looked it up. Dabo
all
was
that
correct
stuff.
On that.
Well, you didn't need to look that up if you followed recruiting, Willie. Come on.
I know, but I had to look it up because I didn't know. I knew he was really good coming out of high school, but I didn't know he set the all-time record. So when Dabo said it, I said, "Oh, well, let me look that up."
No, he's stud.
But then, he was number 1 by all the recruiting services out there, number 1 kicker coming out of the country. So yeah, Clemson's got themselves a 5-star kicker, if you will, and you hope that translates on Saturday. The good news is, Robert, for that is at least he's not cooking. At least he's not kicking in the wind or anything. He's going to be in a controlled environment.
It's a neutral site place.
Right. Now there will be some pressure on it.
Yes, a lot.
So.
What if you can come out and you can handle the pressure against Georgia to open the season in Atlanta? That should do wonders for your confidence.
Yeah, and then Clemson would have a kicker for the next 4 years. I mean, they would. You get another BT Potter. And for the most part, Clemson's had a hiccup here or there with kickers, but for the most part, I think under Dabo Swinney, Clemson has done really well with the kicking situation when you go all the way back to his, how it started with Chandler Catanzaro.
One of the other big topics, more from the coordinator, I know Dabo talked a little bit about it as well, but Riley and Wes both talked about it. The rule change with the green dot and a guy out on the field with the helmet that's talking to the coach or hearing from the coach.
Yeah, interesting. So I'm really interested. Clemson is not showing their cards yet on what they're going to do. They're not letting Georgia know. Are they going to have signs? Are they going to just use the helmet? Are they going to do both? Clemson, Riley was very, mentioned basically we might be doing 2, but we hadn't decided yet, which I totally don't believe. There's no way they're going into game week and hadn't decided what they're doing with the helmet stuff. So, but that's what he said, and then Wes was like, yeah, we may do signs, and the good news is I can talk to my player and kind of make sure we're on the same page with things. He says, we're going to line up, we're going to go no huddle defense, so we probably will use some signs because some guys are going to need it. So, they're being coy with how they're going to, handle this new technology.
And Riley's right. You got to be careful. I mean, you can't every time Kate makes a bad throw, or you can't say, "What the heck was that?" You gotta, you want to build his confidence. You're gonna be able to talk in his ear now.
My question is this: okay, does Dabo Swinney have? Can he talk in the helmet too? Because if he is, then Dabo's going to use the whole 15 seconds, and Garrett's not going to be able to get anything.
Oh gosh, if Dabo, yes.
So let's hope that's
coach,
not the case.
We got to play. Dabo will be doing what I just said.
Yeah.
Heck was that? But it's going to change the game. I think it's going to make the offense better. It's going to give them a little bit of an advantage. I think it's going to help a lot when you're in tempo and you're going fast. So that's one of the things we'll see.
Faster. That's some of the things we heard coming out.
We heard that a lot last summer coming into the season, and that didn't translate at all.
So we don't know what to believe, basically.
We don't.
We've been.
And that's what's beautiful about Saturday.
That's right.
Talking season will be over, and it'll be walking season. We'll be able to see if they walk the walk, and obviously a big test. Wes, what stood out to you on the defensive side from Mr. Goodwin?
Yeah, he talked about obviously the key for him, and it's kind of what I said earlier. I think earlier this week on the message board in a story I wrote. You know, they got to be really good up front. He emphasized that they have to be able to control the line of scrimmage because Georgia's offensive line, guys. If y'all hadn't seen them, they're just a bunch of big, healthy boys. I'm talking. They got one guy on there that's like 6'7".
5-star.
Exactly, and you know that as well as anybody. And they're so Wes talked about how good they are, how strong they are, how physical they are, and that's going to be something Clemson has to go into this mindset that they can figure out a way to just match that physicality, maybe use their speed.
Who's going to match that physicality? We talked about it yesterday.
It's got to be Peter Woods.
Nope. Who's it going to be? Number 19.
Oh, it's going to be K-Park.
K-Park.
Yeah, and Wood, and he talked about
coming out party.
Yeah, and then he also mentioned Vic Burley and Stephon Green. He said he's going to help us this week. So those guys are going to be used this week against Georgia. So that's good for Clemson with depth on the defensive line. So they're going to be bringing some bodies in, and you hope they can wear down Georgia's offensive linemen. You hope. We'll see.
I think they're going to be used very sparingly.
I think Clemson's going to try to use its speed to get around Georgia's big offensive linemen. I think that's the only way they can try to get through there. You bring some blitzes, and we'll talk about this more later.
So you're talking from linebacker, not defensive line.
Linebacker and that defensive line, like you get a guy like Regine,
Shaq Lawson.
Like Lawson. That's the freshman also.
Would not be Shaq Lawson. Sorry about that.
Yeah, not Shaq Lawson. Jaheim.
Yeah, but you got Peter Woods playing defensive end out there. Yeah, that's not speed.
No, that's not speed. And that's another thing. How are they? Me and you talked about this yesterday too. How is the defense going to look schematically? Because every time we've been out there, Wes was working on his nickel packages, how lining guys up, making sure guys. We didn't see that in years past, so this was new, and that's why it stood out to me. And so it tells me that Clemson's base defense is probably going to be a 4-2-5, which is what they ran a lot last year, but the base was still 4-3. So if you're running a base that's more of a nickel base, then you're going to do some things with your defensive front that are different. So I'm interested to see what. Well, with
defensive front, you're going to do some different things with Carter and all his athleticism.
Remember, Nick Eason and Brooke told us you're going to see some odd fronts, a lot of odd fronts out of them. So it's going to be interesting how they use them.
And they're going to do some things to try to surprise Georgia. First game of the season, some things they're not prepared for.
And they have to. Right?
They do have to, and we'll get to that later. All right, Riley. Confident year two. Talked a good bit about Cade and just how he's just more comfortable. I guess is one way to put it.
Yeah.
Versus last year.
Yeah, and he talked about some of the leadership stuff we heard about. Going back to one of the players, Peter Woods, what he said about Cade Klubnik. Cade got the team together either Sunday or Monday. I'm not sure exactly what day, but it was earlier this week. Cade got the team together, and he basically told them, if your mind isn't already right, if your mind wasn't the same as it was 3 weeks ago, then you're not ready for this game, and you don't need to play. So that was a nice kind of message. Interesting. Cade Klubnik, we've been hearing about him trying to be a leader, more vocal. This kind of shows that example. Peter Woods brought it up on his own. Nobody really kind of coerced anything out of him. He just
leadership is great.
Yes,
but we'll have to see whether his productivity matches his leadership.
Well, and the thing that
if you say the right things, if he says what he just says, and then he comes out there and he's not playing an A game, then all of a sudden the leadership thing's out the door.
Right, and the thing I'm interested to see is Riley talked about how they're going to need him in the run game this year, and that they need his legs, and he's athletic enough, he's fast enough. They think he's strong enough now to where they can use him more in the run game. He did gain. He is up to around the same weight Deshaun Watson was used when Deshaun Watson was at Clemson. He's at that same weight. So maybe you try a little bit more things in the run game with Cade. I think we're going to find out very fast if they can do that or not with Georgia. Because Georgia ain't letting Phil Maffa beat them this week. So they do need Cade. In a game like this, they need Cade Klubnik's legs to be able to do something.
Phil Moffitt's going to get his this week.
You think so, huh?
I do.
Oh, man, I
think
like this.
He's gonna,
Robert, give us a little preview, everybody.
He's going to get his a little bit.
Robert,
I'm not worried about Moffitt. I'm more worried about the guy handing the ball to him. but we won't go there. Anything else from the players you want to hit on?
Marcus Tate. I thought, he was asked about, what's different about this Clemson team and that 2021 team, and he says the offensive line. He's like, we're way better than we were in that game. And he's like, and it will show on Saturday.
Well, and that was a hell of a Georgia defensive line.
It was. They had big old Davis on that line. Remember him?
Oh, my gosh.
That Georgia defensive front was unbelievable that day. This is going to be a good defensive front, too, that Georgia has. But it was interesting to see him say that confidently in a press conference, that, hey, we're better, and it's going to be different than it was. So I like the confidence. Well, we'll see if that's the case.
And the good news is that offensive line goes against a pretty daggone good defensive line every day in practice.
They do. So they got an idea. And that defensive line has been bragging about them in practice. It's, Capehart, I remember a few weeks ago we interviewed him. He talked about how different they are and how much faster they are and stronger they are. And how, his words were how much it seems like they know what they're doing. And that was the interesting comment.
Not going to comment on that.
Yeah.
All right, guys, that's a recap of Week 1, Tuesday, Tiger Talk, coaches, players, talking about what's coming, how great everybody's going to be. Next week, as Will said earlier, we'll be talking about, okay, now, you did or you didn't. Clemson wins, there's going to be a whole lot of exciting things everybody's talking about. Clemson loses, then it'll be a little bit different narrative. But we will be there in Atlanta. Hopefully a lot of you guys are making the trip down, and we will have full coverage for you all weekend long and all week heading into the game and coming out of hopefully a Tiger victory. But stay tuned to Clemson Insider for the most complete coverage of Clemson athletics.